Welcome to Awaken Health Pod. I'm Jennifer Grogan, Integrative Health Coach with Rekindle Health Coaching here in Central Illinois.
And I'm Shanna Scordel with Inspire Wellness for You in Arizona. And today, our episode, we're going to talk about, ladies, do you know your cycle? And this could have, different meaning, but basically it's important to know your cycle. If you don't, to learn it, to teach it to your daughters, if you have daughters. That way, instead of fighting against it all the time, you can just kind of get more in the flow and give your body what it needs when it's needing what it's needing. So do you know your cycle? In the comments below when we post this on our Facebook today, let us know if you learned something new from this episode, from our wellness podcast, what works for you. I know for me, I have this app. I don't know if you can see it. Anyway, it's called My Cycle. And I love this app. It's a period tracker for monthly cycles. You can journal in there, and it's very accurate. I've had extremely good luck with it. I've used it for years, maybe even more than 5 years, really. And so for me, that just really helps me know when I'm ovulating, when I'm going to start. But there's a lot more that we're going to go into, not just about when's your period going to come. So what's your take on that so far, Jen?
Well, I like that you brought up the, chart your cycle with using the apps, because typically our cycles go 28 days, but for some it can go long, 21 to 35. But it's, I think, really cool that they have those apps for women, because you can chart your mood, your cravings, you can do your stress, the foods, infections, if you have any during or after. And it creates a lot of talking points for your doctor. So open communication with your doctor is key to anything that you're feeling. So if you have severe cramps and they've changed and gotten worse, communicate with your doctor. And a lot of times people don't put, the food mood together, because what we eat does affect our mood, but our moods go by our cycle. And it's just, I don't know, a little difficult kind of for me to talk about this, because I've had a hysterectomy. I had it 9 years ago, but I cut my ovaries. So I still go through that cycle, and I have to remind myself, oh yeah, that's why I'm moody today. Oh yeah, that's why I'm craving this, So it's really important to understand why you're craving what you're craving, and to be very mindful and just nourish your body. A lot of times people crave that caffeine. I know when I was thinking back, going over my notes, like, what did I do when I was going through my cycles, And it was the caffeine. And I remember the doctor always saying, avoid the chocolate, avoid the soda. And I couldn't figure out why. And I just kind of listened to him, because the caffeine narrows the blood vessels. And we talked about that in the caffeine podcast. Was it last year?
Or maybe the year before. It's been a while.
I know it's been a while. But it because it narrows the blood vessels, it can also cause dehydrates the body, so that you can get the headaches, and just causes more anxiety, and that's not fun. And then you have a tendency to go towards all the sugared foods. Well, the sugar foods can kind of go in and put on more weight gain, and so then we're miserable, like the swelling and the bloating and discomfort.
Yeah, that's something to be mindful about when that occurs. For some people, it's before their cycle, during their cycle. For me, it's more around ovulation, the bloating and the weight gain. And so I just know, that 1 week of every month, I'm my largest. But instead of wondering all the time, why am I gaining weight, or why am I feeling bloated, or why am I full, or why am I tender, connect the dots and know what's going on. And then, either do a warm compress, or, like you said, reduce the sugars and the caffeine. Make sure you're getting, hydration is so important.
I'm glad you said hydration, because water is something that you will retain more water if you're not drinking enough water. The body has to store it. So another way to get rid of the bloating is drink more water and limit the processed foods, because a lot of the processed foods, all the processed foods, is nothing but sodium. Mm-hmm. All the added preservatives. So when you think about your cravings, try to avoid those. And your fried foods, And I know with my female clients, I talk about estrogen foods, and you don't want to overconsume those foods because it kind of like sits in your system longer and it makes you feel heavier. But if you can remove the fried foods because those are estrogen foods, it helps with the cramping. So,
well, and I'm glad you mentioned the processed foods. This is kind of off subject, but again, it's important to know. So the processed foods and the salt and the sodium, that's commercialized salt, which means it's soaked in aluminum, which is a metal. So then you're having, an overabundant amount of metals in your system as well, which is not going to make you feel good. It's not going to make your brain feel good. It's not going to help your body function at its optimal level. That's why people are using sea salt or making their own salt from the ocean. It's just so much more healthier. And the sea salt actually has your essential electrolytes and vitamins and minerals as well. But, like we talked about in the beginning, knowing your cycle and the differences that comes with that. We all have our ebbs and flows and ups and downs and highs and lows. But knowing when something changes, if your cycle becomes more heavier, I wouldn't just ignore that. I would look into that because, like you said, the estrogen foods. I get the answer to that on Apple Watch. A lot of the times, my watch thinks I'm talking to it. Sorry, but a lot of the time. So what happens is when we have an estrogen dominance, it's not necessarily that we're having more estrogen. It's that our body isn't detoxing and metabolizing the estrogen in our liver. And so we get a backup of it. And so what happens is when you care for your liver, that helps detox the estrogen. The phytonutrients and the phytochemicals in vegetables, primarily the cruciferous vegetables, they help block estrogen. So for some people, they want more. For some people, they want less. And so you can use foods and vitamins and exercise to help alleviate and balance out these situations. So you can reduce some estrogen in the body, which a lot of the times when we have a really heavy flow, that's because we have an estrogen dominance. And then you can have your foods, that have high estrogen, like chickpeas, just for example. So I think that's really interesting. And I believe it works. Some people say, no, you can't change hormones with food. I 100% believe you can because I've seen it. My husband had low testosterone, and through diet and exercise years ago, we were able to bring his levels up some as time went on. It decreases with men as time goes on. And as the years went on, like a decade later, he had to look at other alternatives to be where he wanted to be. But we did see those numbers go up. So you can use, there's certain foods that increase your testosterone, your estrogen, and so on, serotonin, all kinds of different stuff. And that's what happens with our cycles. We will have an estrogen elevation, we'll have a testosterone elevation, drops and dips. And so that's what makes the women, lose their minds. Right? It's tough.
It's pretty tough. I was thinking back, what were my symptoms back in the day? And I just remember, oh my gosh, the severe backache, the nauseousness, being over the toilet like I was going to throw up, to severe abdominal pain, bloating, you name it. And it just got to be, with the PCOS and everything before that diagnosis, I was having periods a lot more frequent. And I remember being on birth control twice, 2 different times, only for a year each, and trying to regulate my periods because they came, it seemed like every 21 days to 14 days. And it got to be where I had a prolapse of my uterus. Yeah. And that was causing a lot of the issues. And then they got to be even heavier, and it was like an inch from falling out. And so I was like physical therapy for that. And I had, oh my gosh, it was terrible. And I just remember going into the doctor and he's like, you're going to have a hysterectomy. And I'm like, I don't want my ovaries removed if possible. And I just remember getting the sonograms over sonograms and, just all the discomfort that you could possibly think of, and having the insulin resistance, which plays with the progesterone. So diabetes and your periods can be different as well. And you may not get normal readings for your blood sugar levels if you have diabetes and going through your period cycle. So, it's just, I wrote because I am not good at memorizing things. And I thought this was really cool for those that have diabetes and you want a better understanding of your periods, and a little link to PCOS. So, hope you don't mind me reading this. So you're going to have your blood sugars, they're going to be more imbalanced, difficult to control. Hormonal changes of your menstrual cycle is because halfway through your cycle, ovulation occurs, right? Then you have the progesterone levels increase, and progesterone is associated with insulin resistance. After you ovulate, your progesterone levels are naturally higher, which then goes into the whole insulin resistance. You get the cravings, right? We want the sugar, we want the processed foods, and it's feel good
and the energy crash,
right? And that's why I was taking naps in the afternoon, and so insulin resistance in your food cravings, not the good cravings, and a decrease in your activity. You might think, oh, well, I'm one that works out a lot, blah blah blah, but if you're not, you're going to get the poor glycemic control, which is where the cravings come in. And then you have the whole weight gain with your irregular periods. So then it goes into, when you're overweight, your excess fat or the adipose tissue produces hormones that increase insulin resistance. Mm-hmm. So there's a huge connection there. And your insulin resistance triggers the pancreas to produce more insulin. And then the increased insulin levels interact with the hormones that control menstrual cycle. When your hormonal fluctuations are interrupted, you won't ovulate. No ovulations, irregular periods, and could be linked to PCOS. So I thought that was really cool when I actually was diving in for this podcast, and I'm like, that explains a whole lot from back in the day, when I was struggling with all this, and I'm like, oh, just got to write that out, because I'm like, there's no way I could memorize that part. But I just thought that was really cool, and when you have those aha moments, it kind of helps you figure out different things in your body and what's working and what's not. And I went so long without being diagnosed, 2 rounds of birth control. Oh my gosh, it was terrible. Yeah. And I just getting the hot flashes, like, I'm going to kill somebody.
Yes. Well, there's just so much. The reason why this is so important is because, especially if people are trying to get pregnant, the fertility factor, and being health coaches, we're big advocates on finding the root to the problem if possible. And so I won't settle for if your doctor tells you, oh, you have endometriosis, or you're not fertile. Sorry, you're never going to have kids. That's the Band-Aid. That's the diagnosis. But what's going on in your body? Because you can always, I believe most people, if they're not fertile, they can become fertile by paying attention to your salts and your sugars and your caffeine and your foods and your micronutrients, your exercise and your fat and your insulin and everything Jen just mentioned. So aligning your body to be at its most optimal health if possible increases, better hormones, more happiness, more fulfillment, more energy. And so all of that's so important. And, ovulation in itself can be painful. Constipation that comes with that from the fluctuation of the hormones can be painful. And those are the times where, don't go out for Mexican food for lunch. Don't have a burrito those days. Or if you do, then, maybe look in your Fitness Pal or whatever you use to see your vitamin D levels, your magnesium levels, your potassium levels. Those do help alleviate some of the bloating. Sleep is so good for your digestive system. And a lot of this stuff, it sounds so repetitive, right? For each topic, we can talk about the same things. But I just love, being insightful to others and enlightening others. Sugar, again, has no nutrition, increases your cravings, jacks up your microbiome. But, the more sugar you have, the more sugar your body's going to want. And that's when it's really difficult to start to reduce it and minimize it. And it's not going to help you meet your health goals. It's not going to help you become fertile. It's not going to help reduce the pain or the heavy bleeding from your menstrual cycle. So it's one thing to have some chocolate or a treat, but, you know, be mindful of how much you're having and where you can reduce it, right?
Oh, absolutely. And rest is so important because we're all the time consumed with artificial lighting. You want right? Lighting is very important. You want your natural lighting, not artificial lighting, because we're all the time around the computers, the cell phones, the TVs. We don't take time to really go outside and nourish our body with the sunlight. And I think that is really important for, our hormonal rhythms and stuff like that. And stress and food, they go hand in hand when you're on your period. It does. But we have cognitive decline when we're also on our cycle, and we get irritable, we get tired, we can't focus. And I think that is something to consider as well. Your attention span gets shorter because we're consumed with how we're feeling, and we're just quick to snap. We're irritable, and the husbands come in and are like, whoa, I'm out of here. So but I don't have my periods anymore, but I have an ovaries, so I still get that irritable, but not as bad. But I used to have the cyst on the ovaries all the time, and so those were painful in itself. And it was just funny because now when I get snappy or whatever, my husband's like, okay.
Yeah.
Must have been your cycle time. But I'm like, no, you're just driving me nuts. So you don't know, whatever. But
and so what do we do? Right? Instead of, if you're able to kind of monitor your workload, then on those days, maybe take a day off, check in with yourself. When was the last time you got a break? Did self-care, went for a walk outside, hung out with your friends. That's really important. And I'll try to do that. I'll try to say, I've really been doing great for 4 or 5 days. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed and bogged down because we get overstimulated, especially, right, being an entrepreneur. It's like, oh, I can do this and this and this and this, and I'm going to do all this and this. And then you have a burnout. And so on those days, instead of being mad at yourself that you're less productive or that you're not getting as much done around the house or that you're not spending as much time with your kids, because we need our space, right? I mean, I'm on my cycle right now. So the past 2 days, my kids have been just like right here. And I'm like, guys, I just need like my space, just a little, like physically, and, and then other times I want to cuddle and I want them right there and pick them up and hug them and squeeze them. But know your cycle, know what you need, and give your body, just that. It's kind of like the best gift you can give yourself, even if it's hard, but it's so important.
I think a lot of people have guilt. I can't take time for myself because I feel bad if I'm not doing blah, blah, blah for somebody else, or, and I'm like, I've learned to acknowledge the fact that my body needs that break. Kind of like you, when they're right here, right. I feel that way, probably 1 week out of the whole entire month. And I just like, okay, I have to go meditate. I have to go for my walk. I have to just get out of here, go punch the punching bag, do the elliptical, because I have all that built up. And it's like, in the past it was progesterone cream. I was on that for a year, twice. And because he's like, oh, you have pre-hormonal or pre-menopausal symptoms. And I'm like, but I'm only 39, it's like, what the heck? But it was always that 1 week out of the month. I just felt real irritable, shaky. And it wasn't until I changed my relationship with my food and started working out more that all that went away. And I stopped taking the progesterone cream, went to the doctor. How are you doing on that? I'm like, I haven't been on that in months, but I feel great. Well, what'd you do? And I'm like, I changed my food and started working out, and I don't need it anymore. But there are those times, like you had said, you just get overworked, and you just have to distance, and that's really important. So if you can establish that self-trust for your self-care and get over the guilt is, freeing. It's great. So, but I do what?
Exactly. I mean, it's the old saying, like, how can you give to others if you don't take care of yourself, And
that's true. Yep. But going back to the whole estrogen, I want to say, make sure you get a lot of fiber, because the fiber is going to help go in and eliminate that through the intestinal tract. So just get, more beans if you can, but that also helps reduce the cramps.
Yeah. And it helps eliminate the toxins and the buildup. which also don't make you feel good when you get kind of backed up. And then the phytochemicals with the vegetables, they're almost like a magnet to floating estrogen, and then that helps reduce that and eliminate that out of the body. A resource that I really like, again, we mentioned the app, we mentioned foods, social life, having an accountability partner, all of those great things. I loved the book. People are probably going to laugh when they hear this. I hope no one's driving. But Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. I loved that book. And I think it's great for this topic about knowing your cycle, because it talks about the wave, right? With men and women. Men go in their cave, women have the wave. And it's so important to acknowledge that instead of, it's like a lot of women, they're like, am I crazy? Right? Have we ever asked ourselves that before? Well, when you read this book, to me, it's like identical. It's like, wait, no, everything makes sense. I'm exactly the woman I'm supposed to be because my body's doing everything it's supposed to be doing, according to the book. But it's important, it's a great read. It's good for relationships, but it's really good to understand a little bit of the difference between men and women. Very important life lesson, must be understood. And it helps, just understand emotions and your cycle, the wave, how we work with our big energy and then our crash. Sorry about the noise. And so also do your own research. I'm a big advocate for that as well. There was an article I found online, and it was talking about how your relationship deals with your cycle. So for women, it'll say like, this week you're extra cuddly and whatever, and this week you got a high pitch in your voice, and this week, and so I'm pretty in tune with myself, and sometimes I'll have like a tongue twister a certain few days of every month. And I'm like, I read somewhere, it's like, oh, you'll mumble jumble your words and have a tongue twister. And I'm like, that's so weird. So when that happens, I'm like, oh, I know what time of my month I'm on,
Right. I did that for a while, but nothing would come out right.
I know.
I kept being told by the doctor, oh, you're going early menopause. And I'm like, what? There's no way, And then it was like learning to slow down and think before you talk in hopes that it came out right. But it's like, what did I just say? Yeah. One of those moments.
We have a lot to share with others. I mean, that's a big journey, everything you've went through as well, Yeah. So let's see here. I think that's all the stuff I wanted to share today. Is there anything else that you want to go over?
No, I just think, the key is to know your body, know the time that you're in for the month. And in all reality, on average, we have our periods 450 times in our lifetime. So when you look at it that way.
Oh my God.
Well, mine all stopped at age 35. So that was great, So I feel bad for those that are still, enduring through the pain. But I feel like I had enough that I went through that I, been able to have the hysterectomy and feel better. So
yeah.
But the stupid, the ovaries, they can be kind of stressful at times. But I've come a long way in my PCOS journey, and I've luckily in the past probably 3.5 years, I've not had to get any more sonograms, thank God. So last time I went, she said all your PCOS symptoms are gone. So
yeah. Good job. And you did all that work. It takes effort, and you have to show up for yourself, and you did that. So congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And it's I love the menstrual cycle because it helps you be pregnant, to become a mother. It helps you be the way you're supposed to be. The hormones come and go, and you're energetic and tired and whatever, but it's exhausting, and it's messy, and it's nothing anyone really wants to deal with. Then you got kids. I've got 2 daughters, so 3 children, 2 daughters. So I'm going to get to deal with that, and I'll be calling you because you got your 2 boys. So poor parents, right? What they went through.
Well, it's funny because my husband and I still have this conversation. Like, you remember back when we were dating, and you said you wanted kids, and I said I didn't want kids. Then I came back and said, fine, if I have kids, I only want 2 boys, and that's it. And I said, and God heard that. I got 2 boys, a hysterectomy later, and I don't have to worry about having the conversations you do. And he's like, because I'm like, I don't know if I could have handled that, a girl going through the whole change and just having, so more power to you. But I do think that you're the first woman I've ever heard say that you love having your period.
Hey, womanhood's a beautiful thing. You got to admit that.
Yeah, well, it has its good and bad days.
Yeah.
I hated them. I think my body just did not like them.
Yeah.
It was bad.
Yeah, and many of our listeners, I'm sure, deal with that. I still deal with that too. So just trying to be in balance and be in a line, be in tune with yourself, maybe share with your husband, hey, this is what's going on this week. Put it on your calendar, reoccurring schedule, but
Well, there's times where I get real irritable sometimes, and I'll text him ahead of time, like, warning before you come home. Kind of irritable today. He's like, okay, I won't talk to you. So I'm like, okay. And then I'm fine, because I exercise and get it out, but it's a very short-lived time frame, and it's nothing like it used to be. But like you said, it's part of being a woman. So take the good and take the bad, right? There you have the facts of life.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. Focus on the positive, that's for sure. Well, have a great day. Thanks for sharing your personal journey.
You are welcome. Thanks for letting me share.
Absolutely.
If anyone has PCOS and they need help, let me know.
For sure. We're always here for you guys. Have a great day.